On this video today, I'm going to talk to you about the goal anxiety trap and why setting goals can be dangerous, damaging, and destructive if you don't do it the wrong way. If you don't do it the right way. So, what if I told you that most people don't fail because they don't set goals, but they actually fail because they do? They write dreams on a piece of paper and call it a plan. They define outcomes without defining actions. You don't need more goals. You need a system of inputs that guarantees outputs, with or without motivation. Let me show you how you can reverse engineer any goal you have before you even get started. Because I used to hate, some of you have heard me talk about it. Like, goal setting is a terrible idea. Y'all, how many of y'all have heard me say that? Like, goal setting is a terrible idea. All right, goal setting is a terrible idea. I don't believe it. And I really believe that with every fiber of my being, because most of the people that I know who are, quote, goal motivated and goal setters, most of them, they say they desire this incredible outcome that they never do anything to work towards. And I'm like, this is dumb. And then they feel badly because they didn't do it, and they start beating themselves up. And so now goal setting becomes anticlimactic. In fact, it becomes demotivating instead of motivating. I've seen so many people just think that this wishful thinking of some desired fantasy that they have neither idea nor intention to act upon is somehow going to magically produce a result. It's insanity. And so I thought goal setting was the problem, until I had a conversation in this very same studio with a very good friend of mine who's also one of the most brilliant thinkers that I've ever met and one of the best authors I've ever met, Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And we were talking about goals. And I realized there's a different perspective on goals other than having a bunch of desires, wishful thinking, things that I write on a piece of paper that remind me every day that I'm not there, by the way, when I'm reading them out loud 7 times a day. Can I get a witness? And I realized that Ben doesn't look at goals like that. While we were having this conversation, I'm thinking, okay, there's a different way to do this. By the way, he's the first person I've ever met in my life that used goals in a way that makes sense to me. I'm like, okay, this could be useful. And so basically what I realized in our conversation was that setting goals doesn't have to be a thing where you put a bunch of stuff on a list, you got a wish list that you think is an action plan. It's not that. It doesn't have to be that. It can literally be the point at which you start to reverse engineer any outcome. Now, if you're using goals like that, I celebrate you, my peeps. But if you're not, you might want to change that. Today, I'm going to show you what I call the real goal method. But I'm going to give you an illustration first of how I believe most people do it. Okay? So, my man JQP, John Q. Public. Oh, I cracked myself up. Okay, so there's a cloud. And JQP, my dude, he's down here. He's got his paper in that hand, his pen in that hand. He writes down his goals. That he looks up, he's like, oh yeah, this is great. He's like, I'm going to have this, and then he has a calendar over here. And I want to accomplish this by this date. Right? I'm going to get this, all this stuff by this date. And he reads them out loud every day, and then goes back and does the same thing he did every other day. And he wonders why nothing happens. So, as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about how, have you ever thought about how everything, how so many things in life are a microcosm or a picture of the relationship between heaven and earth and the relationship between earth and heaven? Have you thought about that before? Because heaven gives earth meaning. but earth gives heaven expression. And so what I'm realizing about this goal thing is most people who set goals, they're getting meanings from desired outcomes. In fact, we're going to call this desired outcomes, right? So they're getting meaning from their desired outcomes, but they have no expression, no actions towards getting there. And so what happens is John Q. Public spends most of his life shocked and frustrated, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this isn't working. Well, believe it, bro, because it's not working because you're not working. And if you're working, you're not working on the things that can make that thing happen. Here's what needs to happen. So instead of looking at some future desired outcome and just letting that be your thing that you get your idea, I'm going to put it on here. What if you got your action steps from here? What if you looked at this desired outcome, you said, I'm going to let this determine my action steps. I'm going to let what my desired outcome is determine what actions I take on a daily basis. So I did a video a couple weeks ago, and I started the video talking about how I've been a hypocrite. I don't know if y'all saw that one or not, or remember that or not. But I started talking about I've been a hypocrite, but I was an unintentional hypocrite. But then again, if you're a hypocrite, does it matter if it was intentional or not? I don't know. Maybe one of these days we'll find out. We'll talk about that later. Okay, but I was a hypocrite because I really truly believe that I did not have any disempowering beliefs about my ability to do anything. I just believe I can do anything. Like, I just believe in my ability. I'm made in the image of God, which means nothing else that's ever been made has been made in the image of God, only people, which means if I'm facing an obstacle, that obstacle is smaller than me, and it is also beneath me. So it doesn't matter. Are y'all tracking? But I do have some physical limitations, but we all have physical limitations. We can't jump off the Empire State Building without a parachute and land on our feet and survive. Like, we have, our limitations are determined by principles, right? God's automation. And so I had polio as an infant, so I do not have the ability to bear weight on my left leg, at least not currently, right? But that doesn't mean it's not possible for me to get it. In fact, I believe that I could have had it already if it was more important to me than the stuff I am doing, because then I could just work on it all the time. And so, but the stuff that I'm doing is more important to me than that. So you can believe what you will, but I'm just telling you what my beliefs are. And so when I was a kid, I loved exercising. When I say when I was a kid, yeah, even elementary school, my dad, we always had weights, and we'd lift weights, we'd do push-up contests, we'd do pull-up contests, all that stuff. So I loved working out when I was a kid. When I was in the 10th grade, I was about 135 pounds, and I thought I was the strongest person in the world. Why are you laughing at that? That's not that funny. Okay, I am strong, right? But in the 10th grade, 135 pounds, I could bench press 288 pounds. So I was strong. I was not pretending to be strong, right? And I was like, in fact, one of my friends, I was like, yeah, how much you bench? He's like, how much you bench? I'm 288. You don't bench 288. Okay. And he was bigger than me. So, like, to him, me benching 288 didn't make any sense. There's no way that little person, peon, is benching because I thought 135, that was the most I'd ever weighed at that time. I thought I was a pretty big guy, right? Only to find out now that was really small. Okay, and so, but I used to love exercising. There was a time I could drop and do 100 push-ups without even thinking about it, right? And so then all of a sudden, I started hating exercise. I'm like, why do I hate exercise? It doesn't make sense. Oh, and then I started thinking that I started buying into the cultural idea of what's normal. Well, you're 64. You shouldn't be able to. There's no reason. You shouldn't expect yourself to be able to do 100 push-ups. Well, I shouldn't expect myself to be able to do 100 push-ups in a row today, but that doesn't mean that 6 months from now I couldn't be able to do 100 push-ups in a row. Just because I'm 64, what does that have to do with anything? Like, my cells and my body still function in the same way they always function. It's just like, what are we talking about? And so I realized that the reason I felt like I didn't like working out is because subconsciously, which is where all the results are produced, I felt like it was a waste of time because I wasn't going to get stronger anyway. But once I came to that awareness, and it was so weird because I told the story in that video, I was watching this guy who is a golf performance coach, and then I was watching him, and then I messaged him, and when I messaged him, I realized that he had messaged me already before. It was like, wow, this is fascinating. And so he responded right away. And then we ended up that morning, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm on my one of my biohacking pieces of equipment, and I'm texting this guy. He starts messaging me back on Instagram. So I start this conversation. So I get up and go to the driving range so he can see me hit golf balls. And he's like, "Oh, dude, I can help you get your swing speed up to 125 miles an hour." Okay, let's go, right? And so when I change, but I have to do the inputs to make that output happen. Does that make sense? Okay, so and now that I'm past all of my busy season, I'm getting ready to hire this guy so that he can give me the inputs. He can give me the inputs that'll tell me what to put on here, and then what steps to take that will get me to that desired outcome, versus thinking that because I have this idea of an ideal outcome, that having it written down, reading out loud 7 times a day is somehow going to magically produce this result for me. But instead, I'm going to allow somebody who already lives here to give me tell me what the inputs are. This person right here can tell me while I'm right here what the inputs are. And if I put these inputs in over here, if I take the inputs this person who's already there gives me to put in over here, I can literally collapse time frames and get there so much faster, because now I know what the inputs are. And so this does not become a wish list, it becomes a steps list. Because if I want to go anywhere, I got to take the steps to get there. Are y'all tracking? Okay, so I told you I'm going to show you the real goal setting method. And so here's what the real goal setting method looks like. Number 1, I ask myself, what are the results that I desire? So I start with the results. Now, most people do that, but that's like that. They expect the results to do the magic. The results don't do the magic. After I set the results, which, by the way, I need to make sure that the results are clear, very crystal clear. I need to make sure that they are specific. And by clear, I mean you can clearly see that outcome being experienced. By specific, I mean it needs to be 125 mile an hour club head speed is a very measurable result. Does that make sense? Okay. And then lastly, if you don't have this one, it doesn't matter if you have those other two. It needs to be believable by you. You need to be able to believe it. If you set a goal that you don't believe will happen, all you're doing is announcing to yourself first and everybody else afterwards that you are a fraud, because you don't even believe in it. Now, so that's number 1, results. Number 2 is I need to evaluate what steps or the inputs, evaluate the inputs that are going to produce that output. And when I evaluate the input, I'm going to ask a couple of things. Number 1, what are the perceptions that I have to have in order to achieve this result? What do I have to be aware of? Okay, when I say perceptions, I mean, what do I have to be aware of? I have to be aware of how much it's going to cost: time, effort, energy, and money. I have to be aware of whether or not I currently have the ability to pay, or am I willing to develop the ability to pay. I have to become aware of how long it will take realistically, based on the amount of time, effort, and energy I have to put into the input, right? Like people say, well, what's your goal for between now and the end of the year? I want to make $1 million, right? But you're not even making 100,000. That's silly, because you don't have the ability to believe that, right? So evaluate the inputs. So 1, or A, is evaluate the perceptions that produce that input. Because the reality is, in order for you to achieve the thing that you desire to achieve, you have to believe what somebody who achieves that believes in order to believe it. In order to achieve it. Right? And those beliefs are very different. Like, for instance, one of the beliefs that I can't afford is I can't afford to believe that I can't afford anything. Okay? Now, what do I mean I can't afford to believe I can't afford anything? Because as soon as I believe that I can't afford something, Now, I've made that thing bigger than my ability. I've made that thing greater than the infinite capacity of creativity that God installed in me when he created me. So I can't afford to believe that I can't afford anything. I can't afford to believe that anything's impossible for me, except that something might be impossible for me. That's the only thing I can afford to believe is impossible for me. Can y'all see that's a very different belief? It's so interesting. And I'm always fascinated by this. Like when you believe something so wholeheartedly that it kind of oozes out of you incidentally. Like people ask me, how are you doing? Or they say, how's your day? My answer is going to be always the same thing. Every day of my life is a great day. Today is no exception. Do you know what people do? They laugh. I'm like, what's so funny about that? It's fun, but it ain't funny. Well, the reason they think it's funny is because they believe that's impossible. It's impossible. Every day of your life can't be a great day. What do you mean? Every day of my life can't be a great day. Every day of my life is a great day. Yeah, I have some days that have painful stuff in them. Yeah, I have some days that have difficult stuff. Still a great day. What are we talking about, people? Anyway, we're talking about a perception. See, it's a different kind of perception, isn't it? Than the perception, woe is me, I'm having such a bad day because all these bad things happen. You ain't smart enough to know if the thing that happened to you is bad. Quit tripping. How do I know that you're not smart enough to know if the thing that happened to you is bad? Well, think about Joseph. Joseph is hated by his brothers. Why? Because of his dream. Because of his words. They hated him so much they wanted to kill him. He said, one of them said, let's don't kill him. Let's just throw him in a pit. Then some slave traders came out, took him out of the pit, took him down to Egypt, sold him to Potiphar. Now he's a slave. What? You go from being the favorite, the pet, the favorite child, to being a slave in a foreign country where you may or may not speak the language. And then, as if that's not bad enough, Potiphar's wife tries to seduce him. He said, I ain't having it. So she lies on him and gets him thrown in prison for a crime he didn't commit. As if that's not bad enough, he interprets the dream of the butler and the baker, and he told the butler, when you're restored to your post, don't forget about me. The butler got out of prison and said, Joe who? Oh, Joseph said, but all these bad things happened. My brothers threw me in a pit, and then I got sold as a slave, and then I got thrown in prison for this crime I didn't commit, and then the butler forgot about me. And here I am in this prison, I'm never going to get out, right? That could have been his perspective. Here's my question. Would that have been your perspective? You don't have to answer, just think about it. Would that have been your perspective? Do you have a tendency to believe more in things that are working against you, seemingly, than things that are working for you? What if Joseph would have gotten out of prison when the day after the butler got out? Well, here's what would have happened. He probably would have been on his way back to his family. Or he probably would have been a slave for somebody else. But the reality is, he wouldn't have been in the prison still when Pharaoh had his dream. And so he had to stay in the difficult place, in the dark place, in the damp place, for a crime he didn't commit, so that when what God had ready for him was ready, Joseph would already be ready in the right place for it, even though that right place didn't feel good. Was the prison a bad place for Joseph to be? It was the only place for Joseph to be, which means it was the best place for him to be, even though it was the worst feeling place for him to be. So what if you're going through something right now, and that thing that feels so painful and so difficult and so wrong, what if that thing is what's positioning you to ascend to become the prime minister of your assignment? I think we're so confused. We think, like, how many times in your life have you looked at something and said, this is so terrible, only to find out later it was one of the best things that could have ever happened for you? Okay. So, when it comes to inputs, what are the perceptions? B, what are the practices that you need to iterate? What are the practices that are required to make this happen? Here's what's really interesting about practice. The reason they call it practice is because you do it over and over and over and over again. I like the word iterations. You have to have a lot of iterations. See, you want to be great at something with 7.5 iterations. Good luck. A couple years ago, I created this. I shot this video for one of my coaching programs. It was a coaching call, and I was on vacation in Pennsylvania on a business trip, and I shot this video for the members of my coaching program, and that week my son asked me a question. He's like, Dad, all these people want the same results you've gotten without having to go through all the things you had to go through to get these results. So what are you talking about? He's like, let me ask you a question. When was the last week of your life that went by where you did not do some form of public speaking? I literally could not remember, but it had probably been decades. That's a lot of iterations. Like, when people have a lot of iterations, they make difficult things look easy. When you have a lot of iterations, you will make difficult things look easy, because they're only difficult, watch this now, until they become easy. And the only way they become easy is with iterations. We've gotten so used to microwaves and drive-throughs. We want drive-through success and microwave achievement. And it's like we want to push a couple of buttons and all of a sudden it's done. It's not how it works. And then the next question is you evaluate what people are necessary. Because sometimes the missing ingredient, the missing input is a person. I remember when I first got started in what we used to call the seminar business back in 2001. And I met this man named Jerry. And my other friend Stan asked me to have Jerry speak at an event that I had, and I had an event scheduled with a friend of mine who had a marketing company. This friend of mine paid me, I think, $25,000 or $20,000 back then to speak to his group of people. There were like 35 people there. So I'm like, okay, I'll go ahead and do this. And then I was allowed to make an offer. So I made an offer. I did a presentation. But my friend Stan said, you should have Jerry. Jerry lives really close there. You should have Jerry speak. And back then, I didn't have a prosperity consciousness at all. I was like, why would I have Jerry speak? It's my event. It's not his. That's what I said. But he kept like, no, Myron, I'm telling you, you should let Jerry speak. So Stan for me was one of those people. Because I couldn't see the value of that. I let Jerry speak. So Jerry came down, he spoke, he made an offer. He did like $3,500 in sales. I did like $350 in sales. And these were people I knew he'd never seen before. Jerry's like, hey man, you're flying out of Dallas tomorrow, right? I'm like, yeah. He said, well, if you get there early, what time are you leaving? I said, I don't know, but 2 o'clock. He said, if you get there early, let's have lunch and I'll show you some things about the seminar business. So we get there, me and Stan and Jerry, we get there, meet him for lunch. He spends 2 hours with us breaking down this business. And so many of the things I've learned and so many of the connections that I made early on in this business, I made them because I was connected with the right people. It's so fast. See, no man is an island. Do you realize that God 7 times in Genesis chapter 1 said, and it was good, and it was good, it was good, it was good, it was good, 7 times. The 8th time, he was talking about gold, Genesis chapter 2. When God created everything, there's only one thing he said it wasn't good. It's not good for man to be alone. It's not good for people to be alone. Yes, let's talk about, he needed a wife, but it's more than that. People need people. I was having a conversation with my wife yesterday. I said, babe, have you ever thought about how many people had to live and learn and create and build and do for us to experience things we take for granted all day long? Somebody built all the roads from here to there. Wherever you're here, wherever you're there is, somebody built all those roads. They spent their lives designing and building those roads. Somebody spent all their life designing a personal computer and a phone and a car that had air conditioning so we could be cool in Florida in the summertime. Like literally millions times millions of people, well, maybe not millions times millions, but millions and millions of people had to live and learn and build and create in order for us to experience things we take for granted all day long. Because it's not good for a man to be alone. People are, like relationships are one of the most amazing, magnified, multiplied leverage points that we can have in our lives. And if you want to exist on an island somewhere and you don't like people, like I get being an introvert. I'm an introvert. And I know y'all think that people don't believe me, but I'm really an introvert. If you see me you could probably tell when I was at your baptism that I'm an introvert, right? Right? I'm just kind of like, eh. Like if I'm in my environment, I'm not an introvert because I'm supposed to make something happen. But if I'm in somebody else's environment, I don't need anybody to recognize me. I don't need anybody to see me. I can sit in the booth in the back in the corner of the dark, be just as happy. Wallflower Myron. What kind of flower are you? I'm a wallflower. My name is Myron. I'm Myron the wallflower, right? But I like people, but I'm not a social butterfly, right? But I like people. And so I just find it, I don't know. I don't know. It's just, it is what it is. So, I realize that the difference between me today and me a year from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, is going to be in the lessons I learn, the books I read, and the people that I build relationships with. And I can't resist. I can't have all this internal resistance to building relationships because relationships are hard. That's why they're so important, because they're so hard. Okay? So who are the people? I think about David Mitchell, and all of the things I learned just by watching him, because he was my first friend that was like wealthy, and he had beliefs that were totally different than all of the people who talked about wealth but never had it believed. And so, who are the people? Okay, y'all get it. So, and then next is, what are the action steps? What are the actions I have to take in order to get there? I've got to act. So I find out the inputs, and then I act on the inputs. Now, most people, what they think they're acting on this. Acting on this does not help you reach your goal. Acting on these, acting on inputs, helps you reach your goal. Acting on inputs helps you reach your goal. Like, evaluate the inputs. Like, what are the perceptions? Okay, now I'm going to start believing this. How do you make yourself start believing something? Well, I don't know what you do. Here's what I do. If I find something that I need to believe and I don't believe it, and I want to install the belief, I'm going to write down the ideal belief on a piece of paper, and I'm going to read that belief out loud. Why? Because faith cometh by what? Hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So when I'm saying the same thing to myself that God has already said to me, I can uninstall a belief that's a doubt and install a new belief that's faith. Because faith and doubt are both belief. Doubt is belief in the outcome I don't desire. Faith is belief in the outcome I do desire. So I want to make sure that I uninstall doubt beliefs and install in their place faith beliefs. Are y'all tracking? Okay. So what are action? I have to act on the inputs. I said actions. I should have just put act on inputs. I'm going to erase that. Act. Act on inputs. So when I act on the inputs, there are 3 types of actions I need to take. First of all, I need to act immediately. When I find an input that's going to produce my output, I act immediately. When is immediately? As soon as humanly possible, when I can give it my full intention and my full attention. Right? So immediately doesn't always mean right now. Sometimes immediately means a month from now. But that's as soon as I can give it my full attention and intention. Does that make sense? Okay. So, immediately. Then, can y'all handle it? I have to act consistently. This is the one people struggle with. Why? Because consistency requires iterations when it feels like the last iterations haven't started working yet. And because disruption follows intention, when I first start working out, I'm not going to feel stronger first, I'm going to feel weaker first. Right? Let's say you're going to fast for 7 days. Which days are the hardest? The first 3, first 2, first 3, somewhere in there. First 2 or 3? Hardest. When I get in a cold plunge tank, the hardest part of getting a cold plunge, first 2 minutes. After that, it's easy. Right? So I have to consistently iterate, do the thing consistently over a long enough period of time so that I give eventually an opportunity to be undefeated in my life. Are y'all tracking? I just do it. Then I do it again. Then I do it again. Then I do it again. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again. Right? I do it consistently. And then, thirdly, I do it intensely. I love the fact that we as human beings have the ability to intensify our actions. Isn't that great? It's like when I go home and work out this afternoon. Like I know today, I already know I'm going to go home and I'm going to hit, right? High intensity training. I already know I'm going to do that. Why? Because that's what my coach told me to do. You need to do some hit. I'm going to do some hit. And so I'm going to get on my assault bike and I'm going to ride it like a crazy man. And then I'm going to get off. And then I'm going to get on my tonal and I'm going to hit my tonal like a crazy person. Why? Because, and then I might even get on my rowing machine. Why? Because consistent intensity is hard to beat. Consistency and intensity together as cofactors? What you talking about, Willis? Okay. And then L, I'm going to put L over here, which is number 4. Number 4 are logistics. Logistically map out those steps. Logistically map out your steps. And when you're mapping out your steps, you have to figure out one, this is where all like movement begins. Where am I now? And be honest. Where am I now? B is, where's my desired destination? And then C is, if you don't have these, you're going to quit. What are your lines of demarcation? For me, when I'm on a fitness journey, like I've got lines of demarcation in my weight. I've got lines of demarcation in my strength. It's so interesting. My fitness coach, he said, I want you to do a test. I'm going to sit in this chair. I'm not going to do the test. Well, I will. I'll do it. He said, how many times can you sit in a chair and stand up without using your hands? I'm like, I don't know. Well, I found out it wasn't very many. It was very, very few. I'm standing up on one leg, but that's not an excuse. That's just the facts, right? I was standing on one leg. I could do about 16 times. My wife she got to 100 and she was just like, I don't know, I'm tired of doing this. This is like, it's not hard, right? But she spends most of her life, not most of her life when she's in the gym on a treadmill or a Stairmaster or an elliptical. So she's like, stand up and sit down. Then he said, see how long you can dead hang. Dead hang is when you put your hands on a bar and you just hold all of your body weight is hanging on your arms. And so he said, if you can do a minute and a half, that's good for a man. And he said, if you could do a minute, that's good for a woman. I said, well, what if you could do 2 minutes? And I had never done 2 minutes, ever. I had done a minute and a half a bunch of times. He's like, well, if you can do 2 minutes, you're like in the top 4% of athletic men in the world. I'm like, really? Okay, so I could only stand up and sit down 16 times. But I did like 2 minutes and 5 seconds on a dead hang, with having never done it before. Okay, and so one of the reasons he wanted us to do that is because 2 things, and Doc, y'all know this already because we got doctors in here, medical doctors, physical therapists. So they said that a marker that determines or contributes to mortality is grip strength and leg strength. So grip strength, because of when people get older, if they get ready to fall down, they can't catch themselves. So therefore, they fall and hurt themselves more than they would have had they had grip strength. And then your legs start becoming more and more unstable. By the way, your legs are not becoming unstable because you're getting older. Your legs are becoming unstable because you're not using them. Because sitting deactivates muscle. Right? So all I'm saying is this. Have lines of demarcation. So for my weight, it's every time I get into a new lower decade, right, not decade, something lower denominator of by denominator. Okay, Doc made that up. Okay, cool. But every time my weight goes down into a new 100 and something. So I used to weigh 225 pounds, which is fairly significant. On this current fitness journey, I was about 190. Then when I went on my business trip for my 40th anniversary, I got up to 196. I gained a lot of weight. I went from 180 to 196 in 30 days. The food was really good in South Africa. That's all I'm going to say. And I ate it. I was on vacation from everything. Okay. But when I came back, I was like, oh, no, sir. Oh, no, sir. No, sir. We ain't doing that. And now, and I've been back since the end of September, but now I'm down to like 178, 179, right? Back to where I was before I left. But now, my objective, when I get down to 170, I'll be a lean, mean fighting machine. So, that motivates me, though. Those are some of my lines of demarcation. Like, now I can stand up without using my hands out of a chair 40 times, which is more than 16, but it's not 100 yet. Oh, but we're heading in that direction. Oh, yeah, we're heading in that direction. Why? Because all I have to do is do it consistently with intensity, and eventually, oh, there you go, consistently with intensity, and eventually, it will happen. This is how we keep from beating. We're coming into the end of the year. People are going to set New Year's resolutions, which means they're going to turn over a new leaf, which means nothing for most people. It's wishful thinking about some fantasy destination that they'd like to achieve in their life without any real thought going into it. Let's become the best versions of ourselves between now and the end of 2025 so we can go into 2026 with momentum. Hopefully, I don't know if I'm going to talk about this next Monday, but I probably am. We're going to talk about like how to collapse time frames, or like how to travel, like how to time travel, like when it comes to accomplishing things, because it's kind of mind blowing when you start thinking about time in a different way. Maybe that's what I'll talk about next week. Maybe not. I guess we'll see. But I appreciate y'all tuning in, watching this video. Share it with somebody, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Peace out, Cub Scouts. We'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.